Hey everyone, welcome to Meeple Bits. Thanks for joining me for this setup and how-to for the game Parks. Parks is a game for 1 to 5 players with a playtime of 40 to 70 minutes. There is a solo mode in this one, but we are not going to cover it in this video. Additionally, Parks is a game that I picked up at Gen Con 2022, and I was able to get it signed by the designer, so very excited for that. But join me as we go through this setup, how-to, and I'll bring you my afterthoughts once we're finished. So welcome to what will be a 2-player setup of the game Parks. To begin, put the main play board within reach of all players, including the resource trays on either side, just so that you can select from them. The resources in each of the trays should pretty much be even and identical. So each of the trays should contain wildlife, mountains, sunshine, forest, and water tokens, including some photos. Next, you want to take the Parks deck, give it a good shuffle, placing it into the spot labeled Parks on the play board, and then draw up the top 3 cards into play. Next, do the same with the gear cards, placing it into the gear section and drawing up the top 3 cards of the deck. For the canteen cards, we're going to do it a little bit differently. These are the ones with the plus sign on the back. You're going to deal 1 to each player face up in front of them, and this is their starting canteen. Take the rest of them, putting them in the canteen slot of the play board. Then, take the year deck. This is denoted with a calendar on the back, dealing 2 to each player. Having them then go through them, selecting one of their choosing, which will be their secret objective during the course of the game. I'll go ahead and grab this one, keeping it face down, discarding the other back to the box. Any unused year cards can also be discarded. You will not obtain other year cards during the course of play. And lastly, take the Seasons deck, denoted with the sort of sunshine marker on the back, placing it into its respective location, flipping over the top one, which is going to be the bonus or the starter for the first season of play. Next, we're going to set up the trail. Start by putting the trail head at the far left below the main play area. Take the 5 starter tiles or basic trail tiles, and these will have a little campsite icon without an asterisk on them in the lower right. So you want to take these, separate them from the advanced tiles, which have the asterisk in the lower right hand corner. Shuffle up the advanced, drawing 1 into the main deck, putting the rest face down off to the side. Then give this basic deck, which should contain the 5 basic tiles plus 1 advanced tile, into play. Now there is an advanced tile that has a marker for 4+ players, so if you have a 4 or 5 player game, put that into the advanced deck. Then, one by one, you're going to draw out each of these, creating your trail for the first season. Once complete, take the trail end, putting it on the far right. And so completes the trail for the first season of the game. And lastly, give each player hikers and a campfire token in the color of their choosing. Decide who the first player will be, giving them the first player token. And give the other player, or the second player, the camera in this 2-player game. In a larger table setting, so in a 3, 4, 5, or what have you player, you would give it to the player you would give the camera to the right of the first player. So basically, whoever would end up going last would start with the camera. Put your hikers on the trailhead, and setup is complete, and you're ready to begin play. So Parks is a game played out over the course of 4 seasons or 4 rounds, and the player at the end of the 4th round with the most victory points is the winner. So to start a round, or to start a season, begin by flipping the season card, which was done during setup in this first round, and then set up per the rules of that season, as indicated in the lower right hand of the card. You're going to put these resources onto the trail. So this one is set up in such a way that is water, sun, water. So we'll set up starting on the second trail tile. So this is trailhead, this is first tile, this is second. Starting on the second tile, you're going to do in order water, sun, water, and then complete it water, sun, and there isn't another one, so we'll end there. As players go through the trail, the first player to land on these tiles, in addition to being able to do the action available on the tile, will also take that resource. Additionally, a player may not jump to a tile if they cannot do its action. So, example, a player here would need to convert one resource into a wildlife, which acts as a wild card, or a wild resource of any type. However, since the players have no current resources, in this start, no player could go to this first tile. So on your turn, the player is going to move either of their hikers onto any of the trail tiles of their choosing, so long as they're able to do the action of the tile, and no player may occupy the same spot as another player, including their own other hiker, unless they activate their campfire. This could be used once per season, denoted by flipping it over. So, example, if player 1 were to land on this tile, player 2 could go here, but only if they then extinguish their campfire, thus denoting that they could not take that same hiker action again this season. So we'll go ahead and play that out on a player's turn, starting with the first player. They're going to go ahead and jump to, say, this tile, taking the water into their supply. And then they have the ability to convert or take a canteen card, convert 2 resources into a photo, and take the camera. And additionally, since I've taken water, I could activate over here my canteen. To activate water, canteens can only be activated from water gained at the time of the action. So I could not have water in my supply and later use that water into a canteen. It must be essentially filled as I collect the water from the tile during my hiking of the trail. Additionally, keep in mind, going back just a little bit to the season bonus, you'll notice here that parks cost 1 less water to visit. So what that means is that when visiting any of the parks up here, or from your supply of any parks that you've gained, you'll be able to essentially purchase those parks for 1 less water resource during this season, and this season only. So continuing back to player 1, since they cannot take this convert 2 resources into a photo and then taking the camera, they're going to take a canteen into their supply. Now, player 1 has 2 canteens available. This first one, they can put water in here, which allows them to convert 1 resource into a wildlife or to take a park into their reserve for a future visit. This canteen will award the player basically for 1 water into 2 suns. So instead of spending this water into the canteen, the player chose to essentially keep it into their supply. Now moving on, the gameplay will continue, each player taking turns going down the trail, moving either of their tokens. So first player has completed their turn, so now second player will continue down the trail and go over to this slot. Again, they would not be able to do this action because they don't yet have resources available to them. So they'll take this into their supply. In addition, they'll take the 2 additional suns into their supply, now giving them a total of 3 sun tokens in their hand. And if there were a third player, they would do the same thing, moving their player down the trail. Now back to first player in this 2-player game. They have the option to move either of their hiker tokens. So they don't necessarily have to move their second one in. They could move this player forward to collect more resources should they choose. However, in this case, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move my next player into this spot, converting my 1 water token into, say, a forest token. Or sorry, into a wildlife token as per the tile. So now this wildlife token acts as any resource that I might need in the future. And then player 2 will do the same. Again, they couldn't go into either of these spots unless they spent their campfire. So right now, both players can use their campfire. So let's say, for example, they wanted to additionally come here. They would have to extinguish their campfire to share the spot with another player, converting one sun into one wildlife token. And play will continue until all players have reached the end of the trail. The first player reaching the end of the trail would put themselves into one of these three positions. So we'll cover that now in a little bit more detail. So as we get to the end of the trail, let's go ahead and really quickly, though, cover what is the power of the camera in any event. Well, the player that holds the camera, example player 1, if they ever need to convert two resources into a photo, they can do so at one less its cost. So player 1, if occupying this tile, would be able to, instead of spend 2 resources on a photo, only spend 1 resource to gain a photo into their hand. Photos are worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. In addition, some of the cards, like this secret objective, require a specific number of photos to be taken to meet its end game objective. So players will continue down the trail, and then once a player reaches the end, the first player has the option to pick any of these 3 spots that they want to go on. If they pick the first spot, they would put their token in the far right position, taking the first player token into their hand, as denoted here on this tile. Let's bring it a little bit closer. So they would be able to take that first player token, thus giving them that ability. Additionally, they will be able to take a park into their hand, and that can be one of the 3 available parks or the top park on this deck. So let's say player 1 were to come here, they would keep their first player token, and let's say they brought this park into their hand. You would put it off to the side because it is not a visited park. Any parks collected should immediately be replaced. Then the next player would come through doing the same thing. In this spot, in a 4-player game, the player that, say, comes here to take the gear cards would be able to do so if they come here. In a 4-player game, they'll take a sunshine. Then that way, another player could additionally take a sunshine token. But in this 2-player game, the first player is the only one that would get the sunshine. So they would take the sunshine token into their hand and additionally buy a gear card. So they may want to take this gear card into their hand, which basically gives permanent powers throughout the rest of the game. They would pay its cost, as indicated in the upper right-hand corner, of 1 sunshine. Gear cards then should be replaced when selected. And then lastly is the parks card. A player that comes here may then visit any park up here or off into their general supply of parks that they've reserved. Once you come here to visit a park, let's say they were to visit this park as an example, you would pay its cost as denoted down bottom, which is 2 forest, 1 sunshine, and 3 water. However, in this first season, all parks cost 1 less water to visit. So this one would only cost 2 forest, 1 sunshine, and 2 water instead, giving the player 4 victory points when that park has been visited. And lastly, if you are the last player on the trail, meaning all other players have reached the trail's end, you must take on your action the end trail. You cannot continue to visit any of the trail markers through many of the trails throughout the thing. You must only go to the end. So let's go and replenish that. And let's say this person wanted to just blindly take another park into their hand. And the final thing to note is throughout the game, a player may only hold 12 total tokens. Between wildlife tokens and resource tokens, a player may only have a maximum of 12 tokens. If they collect tokens that would put them over that before ending their turn, they must discard tokens down to 12. And so ends the first season, or round 1 of gameplay. Players will continue this 3 more times until the game ends. To reset a season, as noted kind of down here on this section of the board, you're going to do a few things. Start by returning all hikers back to the trailhead. If there are any additional resources, go ahead and clear them off. Back into the supply. Take all trail tokens back into a shuffle drawing up one additional trail token into this hand, giving it a shuffle. And for the next round, the trail becomes one tile longer. Discard the current season card, flipping the next season, following its rules for setup and a new bonus. This season, gear cards cost one less sunshine to buy. The setup is water and sunshine. Again, same thing. When setting this up, you're going to start with tile 2, water, sun. Additionally, at the season end, the player holding the camera icon may take a photo, paying the resource cost, and taking a photo into their supply. So they'll be able to take 1 and 1, giving them a bonus of 1 additional photo for the trail previous. And lastly, any players that use their canteens discard the water on that supply back to the supply and reset your campfires for the next round of play. As mentioned, the game will continue for 4 rounds, and at the end of the 4th round, you're going to add up your points. You're going to add up all of your park cards that you've visited, not reserved, but actually visited during the course of play. You're going to check your secret objective to see if you've met its condition and add its victory points. Add up any photos that you may have taken, 1 point per photo. And the player that ends the game with the first player marker gets 1 additional victory point. Tally it up, and the player with the most points is the victor. So that's going to do it for this how-to for parks. I'm going to go ahead and tear down the table and bring you guys my afterthoughts. Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that setup and how-to for the game Parks. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into my afterthoughts of this one. Bottom line, yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Now, as you maybe play it or watch it being played, you're going to draw a lot of lines and a lot of correlations to Kaido. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And yeah, it really does play very similar to Kaido, but not necessarily a bad thing. Because look, there are only so many mechanics in a game, and one thing about this one, though, that does kind of switch it up a little bit is, as I mentioned, like the campfires to be able to occupy a space with another player, and a little additional things to get with your resources or currency kind of does differentiate the two. I guess going into a few other thoughts on this one, I think the game is absolutely gorgeous. Unique artwork on every single park card is just astonishing and amazingly done. So I love just kind of looking at the parks as I visit them and get them drawn out, and really whether I get to visit them or just get them in my reserve to visit, again, the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. In a lot of games, I feel like the art is almost an aside, and in fact, I was just playing a game over the weekend. I'll not mention it right here, but I was playing a game over the weekend, and I realized kind of almost towards the end, I didn't even register the art of the game, so it was just there, but it wasn't really meaningful. Whereas this one, I want to enjoy it. I kind of enjoy reading the facts of the parks and things like that. So why is Parks a game that you may want to add into your collection? Well, 1, it's a gorgeous game. 2, it's super simple to play. So this is a really good game that almost anyone can quickly understand. There are a few, small nuances to the game that I think might have been overlooked in the rule book. One being, for example, if you don't visit one of the trail tiles, leaving a resource on there, does that resource get discarded? Well, it's not addressed in the book, but it's sort of implicitly applied when you're resetting the trail and reshuffling them. So while it doesn't say that you discard any resources that may be left, it's almost an impossibility that someone doesn't visit one trail tile during the game. A reason why you may not want to add parks into your collection is, as I mentioned, just because if you've played Tokaido, then you've theoretically played Parks as well, and for one reason or another, maybe you didn't enjoy that one. And if you didn't, I would almost say that you would not enjoy Parks either, because they're too similar to one another in their gameplay and such, that if that isn't in your wheelhouse or in your breadth of games that you enjoy to play, then just give Parks a miss. No matter how beautiful it may be, that's just not the type of game for you. No problem. My personal thoughts, as I mentioned, I did pick this up while I was at Gen Con 2022, so this year, and I'm really, really excited. I don't know why I didn't get it in years past. It was obviously wildly popular, and they did release an expansion for it, which I didn't pick up because, as I mentioned, I hadn't yet really played the game, so I wasn't sure if I wanted to invest further into an expansion. But some of the, now having played it a bit, some of the additions do seem like they're good additions into the game. The game plays well at all play counts. So in a 2-player game or a 5-player game, I thought the gameplay was still really good. And it played quickly no matter what. So it just sort of flew by. And I know that it says upwards of 70 minutes, but if you've got a table of players who have already played it a bit, then they're going to be taking their action and kind of already know what they sort of want to try to go for, in essence. So that'll do it for this one. If you have any questions about Parks, please leave a comment down below. I'm happy to answer it the best that I can. If you've enjoyed the video, I do appreciate the support. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And as always, everyone, until next time, thanks so much for watching.